Mic check 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. And a happy Tuesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Not too many changes throughout the rest of your work week, but we'll go over some important aspects to your forecast, especially probably the question that most of you want to know. Will there be fog for the next couple of mornings? We'll go over what our future view graphic has to say about that. But first and foremost, if you did miss it yesterday, we're going to go ahead and talk about our rainfall for the month of January, because this past weekend we did get just a little bit of rain. Not too substantial of an amount whatsoever. It actually carried over the course of 2 days, both on the 2nd and going into the 3rd. So last Friday and into Saturday. Most of the rain did fall on Saturday for just over a ½ inch of rain. And you can see that we're still hovering in this near normal category. At least about 0.6 inches of rain did put us up in the upper tier of this near normal box, but now we are continuing to steadily decline, and we didn't have any rain recorded yesterday, but of course forgot to change the masking point over there, so it's hiding the 5th over there. But I imagine this white dot just got a little bit of a downtick, but still hovering in the near normal category, and the total so far this month just 0.61 inches. And comparing that to average, about 4 inches of rain normally falls in the month of January. Actually a little bit of a drier month all time compared to what we saw in December, where 4.11 inches was the average for the month of December. And your record set back in 1925, where we had a very, very wet month of January. So 101 years ago, we had 13.22 inches of rain. Don't expect us to get anywhere close to that, but right now we're around the pace that we should be, with one rainmaker so far during about the first week of the month of January. Your main headline is back into the 70s, potentially as early as this afternoon. If we don't hit the 70s today, then we are going to hit them throughout the rest of the work week. But dry, besides some light rain chances that we will have over the course of the next couple of days. We'll go over what times of the day do look the best for maybe receiving some of that light rain, but not going to pose too many impacts to your day-to-day routine whatsoever. Then a front will begin to approach as we head into the weekend. Starting to get a little bit of a better idea about the specific timing of this front. So we'll go over everything in full detail that you need to know across the course of the work week and as you head into the weekend for maybe any weekend plans that you do have, especially those of you that might even be watching the Indiana-Oregon game or traveling up to Atlanta to watch the Peach Bowl on Friday. So here's a look around the quad, where it was another very foggy start to yet another day. So we have continued to watch that fog lift up a little bit higher in the sky, still leading to a very gloomy atmosphere in downtown Dublin, downtown Macon, Warner Robins, but finally some glimpses of the blue sky that you can see down here at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. Looks like we actually have some breaks in the cloud cover that are leading to some peaks of sunshine. So the more sunshine that you do get, that is going to continue to contribute to your temperature warm up, and the more sunshine that stays present all the way through the rest of this morning and as we transition into the afternoon, that's going to lead to a warm up closer to the 70-degree mark later on today. Here's your current visibility map, where patchy fog is still remaining as you go up I-75 north, but it's relatively thin in nature, not as widespread and not as dense in nature as what we did see and what we still can see in areas closer to the Georgia and Alabama state line. Temperature-wise, we are beginning to warm up now that the cloud cover is getting a little higher up in the sky. Scattered about the mid-50s, the upper 50s, some areas already above the 60-degree mark. 61 in Vidalia, 62 all the way down in Americus, and it looks like 52 degrees going to be our coolest temperature here at the 11 a.m. hour. But right now, it's mainly a story of mid and upper 50s on your temperature map. So now, even with some of the breezy conditions that are settling in, not going to have an influence in terms of what it feels like, where we did have plenty of widespread numbers in the 40s this morning. If you paired that up with the breeze, they would have felt a little bit cooler. But 56 in Macon, actually one of the coolest temperatures that we see down in the southeast at this hour. 62 in Charleston, 67 in Jacksonville, 68 in Panama City, and a pair of 73s across New Orleans and Orlando for the warmest numbers that we see here on this Tuesday morning. Up to the north of us, still a pretty similar environment, but it is a forecast that continues to really be dominated by cloud coverage. And along with that, a slight uptick in the moisture content. Your dew point temperatures hovering in the low to the mid 50s, maybe even right on the 60-degree mark in areas like Americus. So your dew point temperatures are continuing to be very close to what the actual temperatures are sitting at, indicating that we are getting a slight uptick in the moisture content, and that's going to help lead to a couple of scattered light shower chances over the next couple of days. Winds and wind gusts, we're starting to see that blue color build in from west to east, and that is going to lead to some gusty winds, which I think are mainly possible for about a 3 to 4 hour time frame as we get just past lunchtime. So we'll go over the specific timing and how gusty some of those winds could get later on today. But let's circle back to yesterday's almanac, which we were talking about it over the last couple of days. Low 60s have been very popular for some high temperatures. 63 yesterday, a little bit closer to average than 64, which we hit on Sunday, but didn't quite get as warm as we were thinking yesterday because the cloud cover was very reluctant to get out of the picture. But this is just the Macon area, an area where the cloud cover did stick around for quite some time into the afternoon. Some areas that saw more peaks of sunshine yesterday definitely saw some higher recorded temperatures than the low 60s. I imagine they did increase up into the mid, maybe even the upper 60s yesterday afternoon. But still kind of picking at straws with this. It is pretty close to average, and in fact the closest we will be to average for quite some time. Your morning low temperature and also was pretty close to average. 36 is where we typically start out each and every morning at this time in the month of January. 39 was our recorded low temperature as of yesterday morning. No rain recorded, so your departure of rain continues to go back down in the negative category. We did have a positive in front of this as of yesterday, but it was only 1/100th of an inch. So obviously each and every day we should be recording about 0.15 inches of rain in order to offset what we typically see on a dry day that decreased from day by day. But we do have some more rain in store as we go into the weekend, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed at least some fairly substantial totals, but we'll continue to fine tune what that is looking like as well. Sunrise and sunset times, still not too much variation. And before we talk about your sunrise and sunset times, we'll go ahead and circle back to yesterday. And briefly, we already just talked about it on that last graphic, but 63 degrees. Not only was it the fifth day in a row that we have recorded a number for our high temperature somewhere in the lower half of the 60s, but January, 5 days in a row to start out the month with above average high temperatures. Your average high temperature right now around 59 degrees, so 60 degrees was the closest we got to it as of Saturday. Just slightly above average, but we're looking to continue the stretch of above average days and continue the pattern that we did have towards the end of the month of December, where we completely flipped the script from a very below average start. It was a very chilly start to the month of December. We got about halfway through, and then we started seeing our fair share of above average numbers each and every afternoon. And then we had that cold spell right at the last couple days of the month, right before the New Year's holiday, but we have had a steady warm up ever since. So speaking of the sunrise and sunset times, if you also missed this yesterday, January 1st, that is important because it is marking the first day of about a week time frame where we will have the latest sunrise during standard time. So right now we're in standard time, haven't officially entered daylight saving time. We won't do that until we get to March 8th, but 7:37. So that was the sunrise time as of this morning, January 6th, this morning, and we will continue to have that sunrise around this time for a couple more days before the sunrise, actually, believe it or not, gets earlier and earlier. So not too much of a change between the 1st and the 25th. 7:33 a.m. is going to be the sunrise as you go into the end of the month of January. But I did highlight this date because that is going to be the first time that our sunset returns to the 6 p.m. hour. Getting later and later is that sunset as opposed to your sunrise, which will continue to get earlier and earlier. So the hours of daylight will continue to steadily increase throughout the course of the month of January. We're going to gain roughly about a half hour of daylight, but then that is going to change even more drastically as we transition into the month of March. March 8th, right here, 7:53 a.m. sunrise. So like I said, we do have the latest sunrise during standard time as of right now. However, once we transition into daylight saving time beginning, which will be March 8th. That's when we're going to spring forward. That is when our sunrise is going to move back an hour. So in all reality, if we didn't have this time change, your sunrise time would be around 6:53 in the morning as opposed to closer to the 8 a.m. hour. Going to take a little more time for that sun to rise in the morning, which if many of you dread that early morning wake-up call and that first peak of sunlight each and every morning, then this is going to be some good news for you. However, that sunset is going to be a lot more of an appropriate time, 7:37 p.m. And then by the time we transition into the beginning of March, we'll already be talking about like how we're on the cusp of spring. We might even talking about Cherry Blossom Festival around that time. 11 hours and 43 minutes of daylight. So as we go across, today is January 6th, so about the next 2 months in time, we are going to gain almost 2 hours of daylight, just under 2 hours of daylight, maybe more, about an hour and a half of daylight. But obviously you will see more peaks of sunlight as you are out and about doing your daily routine, whether it's in the morning, whether it's a little bit later into the evening hours. And as that sunset continues to get later, we are going to start to begin to shift that window where we do hit our afternoon high temperatures each and every day. It is very likely going to get a little bit later in the afternoon. So probably talking about 3, 4 to 5 p.m. as opposed to 2, 3, and 4 o'clock, which we are right now. And speaking of that 2, 3, and 4 o'clock window, that's going to be the time frame today that we are going to have the potential to reach the 70-degree mark. Now, like I said, some areas going to fall short of this today, just like we saw yesterday, as we are anticipating another afternoon where there are more clouds than sunshine. But it is going to be a breezy atmosphere, and this breeze is going to be important because take a look at the direction of those winds. Southwesterly winds, that's ushering in a slightly warmer and a slightly more humid air mass from down in the Gulf, and that is going to propel some warmer air into the forecast, even despite the cloud cover kind of blocking a lot of our sunshine, which normally heats the surface. So I do anticipate that your numbers are going to be a little bit warmer at the very least than what we saw yesterday, with a high temperature of 63 degrees. It's just a question mark of if we make it up to that 70-degree mark. So I always like to go on the upper end with your high temperature. If you do fall a little bit short, not to worry, because we are going to reach the 70s as we go into the back half of the work week. But we also have another talking point, along with the foggy morning, which we're now transitioning out of very thankfully. But we also have a few sprinkle showers to talk about, which we'll show you on Future View in just a moment, when the best window for time is going to be for seeing those sprinkle showers. So here's a look at your hour-by-hour warm-up. Meteogram has us going into the 60s by about 1 p.m. and then eventually peaking in the mid-60s, 65 degrees as we go in between 2, 3, 4, and 5 o'clock before we eventually finally begin the cool down. But it's not going to be too quick of a cool down as we go overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning, because we are going to keep plenty of clouds in the forecast. So I'm only looking at morning low temperatures, maybe even down into the low 50s as you wake up tomorrow. Very pleasant environment, to say the least. Here's your satellite and radar picture, where as of right now, not sure if I'm picking apart a sprinkle shower right up here in southern Jasper County, but all in all, the main story is we are continuing to watch that surface level cloud cover lift up higher in the sky and continue to crowd your satellite and radar image. And along with that is just a cloudy atmosphere all across the southeast. Other areas like Alabama, northern Georgia, that are walking out to very similar environments that we are weather-wise and atmosphere-wise. So we all are going to kind of have a very similar forecast over the next couple of days. High temperatures somewhere above average in the 60s and 70s, our fair share of cloud cover, and some areas where we do have some better light shower chances, which as we progress throughout today, you will see your fair share of on and off cloud cover, but it's really a story of some of those isolated light showers. I've been referring to them as sprinkles, as drizzles. It's not going to be very substantial rain whatsoever, and it is going to start to fall maybe as you go kind of wind down for the night around 10 p.m., maybe a few lingering in the early morning hours tomorrow. It's very likely that you do walk outside and you don't even see any signs that it did rain, and that could be as a result of the rain falling being so light in nature, not really dampening the surface whatsoever, or it could be as a result of you just missing the rain entirely. I've only given this rain chance about a 10% chance, and that is going to exist for both Tuesday and as we go into Wednesday, mainly during that nighttime to early morning time frame. But we also could see some light showers trying to hang around into the later morning hours the farther south that you live tomorrow, before eventually clearing out as we go into the late afternoon. And finally, some mostly sunny skies for a change on your Wednesday afternoon. But just as quick as that cloud cover seems to go away, it builds back into the forecast as we go into Thursday morning, and then partly cloudy to some mostly cloudy skies once again for your Thursday afternoon. Maybe seeing a couple of those light green dots once again, about a 10% chance of a sprinkle as we go throughout your Thursday, and then eventually push into the beginning of your weekend or the end of the work week, whichever way you see Friday as, and future view goes all the way out to there at around 4 a.m. as of right now. So in light of the clearing in cloud coverage we do see tomorrow, I think that leads to even more of a warm up. 70 degrees for a high temperature, once again for just some areas that get lucky and see enough sunshine today. And then we will see some mid 70s for high temperatures as we go about Wednesday afternoon. And like I mentioned, low 50s for morning low temperatures as you walk outside tomorrow. A few areas are going to go down into the upper 40s. I do imagine a 48 or a 49. But for the most part, I do believe our numbers are going to start out in the lower half of the 50s as that cloud cover building in is not going to allow for temperatures to drop down as much as they could. 10% chance of rain Tuesday, 10% chance of rain on Wednesday, and you guessed it, a 10% chance of rain as we go into Thursday, because there's no real change in your forecast over the next 3 days, but there are some minuscule changes that we can pick apart, and we'll talk about how those are going to influence your forecast. But number one, we'll talk about the breeze. What time frame for the rest of today are the breezy conditions going to build in? Well, this is just going a couple hours into the future. Right there, just past lunchtime, I'm thinking around 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and really only continuing into maybe about 4 or 5 o'clock is going to be that window where we will have the gustiest winds present today. Like I said, a very short time frame, but we will keep a steady breeze in the forecast as we go into the nighttime hours. And again, those south and southwesterly winds going to be a big reason why we are getting a little bit more moisture in the forecast and some slightly warmer air from areas down on the Gulf Coast and in the northern Gulf itself. And then as we go all the way into Wednesday afternoon, we might still have some gusts up to 10 to 12 miles per hour, nothing really substantial, but just wanted to show you that window for the rest of this afternoon where we are going to have some gusty winds in the forecast. In terms of the fog, you should expect some more fog in the picture as we roll into tomorrow morning. I know obviously you're probably going to get very tired of me saying allow for a few extra minutes on that morning commute, increase the distance between yourself and the car driving in front of you. But I promise you it will be worth your while, especially if you get some areas of very dense fog that we were getting an image of at the Georgia National Fairgrounds this morning, where you couldn't see anything but straight gray on the sky cam. So obviously you want to be extra cautious when you do have limited visibility to that extremity, somewhere in maybe getting into only a couple hundred feet ahead of you. So that's the main reason why I do offer all those safety tips for you. Just budget for a few extra minutes, and it's better to be safe as opposed to sorry. Just exercise a little bit more caution on the roads, especially if the fog is going to be this widespread come tomorrow morning according to the graph model. But good news, we might receive a break. Fingers crossed as we go into Thursday morning. It looks like most of the widespread fog is farther down to the south of us, over to the southwest of us, but not quite here in central Georgia. And this is actually going to be very indicative of maybe a frontal boundary trying to come through and at least push down to our southernmost counties, kind of create a dividing line of some slightly drier air up to the north behind it and some slightly more humid air ahead of the boundary down in South Georgia. But then as we go into Friday morning, it looks like it will be the same story and a different day as we walk outside, maybe even possibly another dense fog advisory issued for a select few counties as of tomorrow morning, as of Thursday morning, as of Friday morning. So you should expect for your visibility to be limited each of the next 3 mornings and at least some patches. But if you do want to know which day I have the least confidence in some fog forming, I think that is going to be Thursday morning, where hopefully we can get some clear skies and maybe actually have a beautiful sunrise to walk out the door with for a change. Here's a look at your humidity map. So like I said, getting a steady influx in the humidity and the moisture content in the atmosphere by the time we roll into 2 a.m. This is overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning. Then that boundary kind of pushes through as we go into very early on Thursday morning. So that's why you are going to see that dividing line, and I think this is going to correlate to where the foggy skies are as well. More humid down in South Georgia, a little bit drier up here in central Georgia and northern Georgia. And then as we go throughout the day on Thursday, that humidity very quickly rebounds back up to the north. So that's why we aren't looking at too much change with your forecast, because just as quick as the humidity leaves the forecast or just gets a very slight decrease, we are looking at it to rebound back into the forecast. The more moisture you have, the better chance that some of those scattered sprinkles you are also going to have. And along with humidity, typically does come some warmer temperatures, and warm for this time of year is going to constitute the 70s, hanging out in the mid 70s all throughout the rest of the work week and into the beginning of the weekend as we go into Saturday. All of these well above average of 59 degrees for this time of year. And your morning low temperatures, we're not even going to sniff that average low of 36 degrees. 43 degrees to start out Tuesday morning, 52 degrees as we go into tomorrow morning. You can get an idea of which areas or which days do have the potential for more cloud cover building in during the overnight time frame into the early morning hours. That would be Wednesday, that would be Friday, and that would also be Saturday. It looks like we might not have as many clouds in the forecast as we go into Thursday morning with just some slightly cooler temperature values, only about 12 degrees above average for this time of year, as opposed to Saturday, which right now the morning low temperature is forecasted 20 degrees above average for this time of year. So taking a look at the muggy meter, once again, really didn't think I'd be showing this too much in the month of January, but here we are. We actually do have some decent humidity in the forecast each of the next couple of days. That frontal boundary that does try to push through maybe as we get later into Wednesday, early Thursday, doesn't really result in too much of a downtick because the humidity is going to be very quick to rebound back into the forecast. But the frontal boundary that does come through, what looks to be later on Saturday, finally does usher in some cooler and some drier air. This only shows you the drier air as of right now as we go into Sunday and Monday, but I promise you some cooler air is going to be in store with that as well. So let's go to your long range models. This is going to be kind of the main focus of your forecast. This is what you are going to be keeping an eye out ahead of time for. And obviously you might have seen other people over to the west and the northwest of us. They do have some severe weather risk back over into Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, western Tennessee, maybe areas of Kentucky, possibly even some areas of northern Alabama. Well, as we go all the way through your Friday afternoon and evening, it's still looking good to go. We might have some cloud cover in the forecast, maybe a few spotty showers just from the lingering pattern that we have over the course of Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, going on one more day to wrap up the work week, but still looking like a good afternoon and evening for any outdoor plans that you may have. Even as we go into Saturday morning, it still looks like this frontal boundary kind of slowing down in speed, and it's kind of stalling out over to the west of us, but it will steadily creep over into central Georgia. What time that frontal boundary crosses over central Georgia is going to be very, very important in terms of how much rainfall are we going to get. Are we going to have any thunderstorm potential or severe weather potential like areas over to the west? It's all going to be dependent on the timing of this front, which you can see is trending later and later. This is going all the way to the midnight hour, transitioning into Sunday for the last day of the weekend. It looks like the European model in blue leading a little bit ahead of what the GFS does have here in the green, but the general consensus is this frontal boundary is looking to cross through later on Saturday, maybe into the first part of your Sunday, according to the GFS model, which if it did this, it's going to encounter some cooler temperatures during this time of the day, as opposed to how warm it could get, somewhere in the mid 70s, decent humidity in the forecast. That would create some instability to work with if, say, this frontal boundary came through during the afternoon hours on Saturday. So right now it does look like the potential for stronger, more severe weather, according to these latest model runs, is looking less likely here in central Georgia, but this is still very likely to change and very likely will change as we do get closer and closer. But however much rain we receive, we are looking at this to be the most organized rain chance over the next couple of days, number one. But the one thing that we are remaining confident in is the cooler and drier air that will be ushered in behind this frontal boundary. It's just what's going to lie ahead of the frontal boundary is the big question mark that we still have. And then as we go into Tuesday next week, looks like cloud cover's back all over the southeast and some rain chances down to the south of us. We'll continue to keep an eye on that. That is a very interesting setup possibly that we could have if we are to have some very cold temperatures. But we'll revisit that as we get closer. Right now the main focus is on what's surrounding the weekend, and you can see an excessive rainfall outlook, a slight risk. This obviously is nowhere near central Georgia. Here we are down here in Macon, to the bottom right of these shades of green and these shades of yellow. But I did just want to highlight the risk outlined all the way through Friday, courtesy of this frontal boundary, which is some scattered flash flooding in northern Alabama, kind of getting into northeastern Mississippi, central and eastern Tennessee, just to the east of Nashville. So there is a bit of a flash flooding risk, just scattered and isolated flash floods. This isn't the most substantial risk, as you can see the moderate and high areas are not shaded whatsoever. But this is what it's bringing to the areas before it comes into central Georgia. And along with that, we do have a look at the day 4 storm outlook, which this yellow shade, 15% chance, that equates to about a level 2 out of 5 risk on the SPC scale. Once again, not for central Georgia, but this is what it's doing for areas over to the west of us. Like I mentioned, they do have a bit of a severe weather risk over there along the Mississippi River, but as this front continues to progress over to the east, not in any form of the day 5 storm outlook and not in any form of any kind of outline on the excessive rainfall outlook. But those are potential impacts that we could be looking at if we are to see better agreement in the potential for maybe some more active weather. But as of right now, it does not stand. We don't have any risk here in central Georgia besides just some rain. And right now we can really fine tune the passage of this front according to these future view rainfall graphics. The GFS hinting at an arrival really almost early morning on Sunday. So if it were to do this, maybe come through during the day on Sunday, it's not indicating some heavy rainfall rates whatsoever. Once again, that is going to be a common thing that you see to the west and the northwest of us. Heavier rainfall totals, and that's obviously going to indicate the potential for more so some thunderstorms in activity. This is just looking like simply some scattered showers, maybe only about 1/4 of an inch of rain. That's not associated with thunderstorms whatsoever. And the European model does give us a bit of better resolution. Rain kind of right on our doorstep as we go into the late afternoon time frame before p.m. on Saturday. That's going to be the tail end of that late afternoon time frame when temperatures are at their warmest. You see we already have some shades of green indicating a couple of light rain showers. That's actually going to be what's possible each day up until then. Those scattered light showers, it looks like they may have some fairly good coverage here in central Georgia. But then the rain moves in as we go into Saturday night, overnight into early on Sunday, and only seeing some rainfall totals of a couple tenths of an inch of rain, and the higher rainfall totals associated with some thunderstorms still looking like a better chance of that over to the west and the northwest of us. So as of right now, we do have a fairly decent chance of rain, but you will see that your chances of rain increase as we go into Saturday, and then leading a little bit into holding on to some shower chances during the morning hours on Sunday. We still need to do some fine tuning with the specific timing of these rain chances, but I've elected to kind of move your rain chances off Friday more so into the back half of your weekend on Saturday and Sunday. But then as the front comes through, it looks like we're already going to start to feel some of that cooler air behind the front as we go into Sunday and especially at the beginning of next week. So resulting in a pretty big cool down, not the most substantial one that we've had our eyes on over recently, but 30 degrees for a morning low temperature. Looks like we're going to start to flirt with that line with morning lows somewhere in the upper 20s, the low 30s, and some afternoon high temperatures that only get somewhere up into the lower half of the 50s. Until then, above average is the name of the game. Mid 70s for high temperatures for each day at the tail end of the work week, Wednesday, Thursday into Friday, and for one more day on Saturday, depending on what time that frontal boundary comes through. If we have a high temperature, say in the mid 70s, like I said, some warm temperatures in the afternoon window. Along with that, some decent moisture in the forecast. We are looking at about a 10% chance of some spotty light showers or just some sprinkle showers over each of the next couple of days, embedded within whatever cloud cover that we do have in the forecast. But I would say for Tuesday into Wednesday, so it's mainly a rain chance for tonight into early tomorrow morning, and then I think rain chances taper off for Wednesday afternoon, and then they're back on and off throughout your Thursday and Friday. Best rain chances going to arrive on Saturday, and then as that front passes through, cooler air starts to usher back in, and then we finally get some drier air, so we should have plenty of sunshine towards the beginning of the work week next week. So that's where things stand. We'll continue to circle back to this each and every day. 11 a.m. we'll be doing an update here on your extended forecast. about what's changed with the model runs, what timing we're expecting this frontal boundary this weekend to arrive, because the timing is going to be important for what type of weather we will see and how much rain that we will receive as well. So continue to stay updated day by day as we get closer to some of these weekend rain chances. Until then, enjoy the stretch of above average temperatures each and every day and soak up any peaks of sunshine that you can find, because it's been very hard to find with the foggy starts that we've had each and every day. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you here once again tomorrow.